Oh, well, welcome everybody. We are gathered again with this phenomenal team made up of legends, made up of my favourites. It is what it is. We are coming to the fifth time of having these clips and chats. Won't be probably the last, but it's our last one in this little topic. We have looked at what is discipleship and what discipleship will look like with our young people as a result of these times. And today we wanted to be able to help bring some tools to us as leaders in how do we deliver the discipleship, and also a bit more of a conversation that we have on our hearts as we've been nattering. So again, we really encourage you to watch this and to then watch it with your team and to populate comments wherever you're watching this as a platform, and just help give insight so a wider community of us are all in the same page, taking this long walk in the same direction. So what do you think, guys, we want to communicate today?
Shall I kick off? I think more than ever in this season, when we young people have been in lockdown, or we've all been in lockdown, and we haven't been able to meet together with our groups, I think more than anything else, what young people really crave is that real relationship and connection. And I met with my group outside for the first time last week, because that's something we're now allowed to do. And the difference between that, we've been on Zoom ever since the start of lockdown, every week, and that's been great. And I know from some of the things that young people have shared with me that they've really appreciated the continuity of that and the fact that we just kept going, even though it's been different and difficult, and that they've appreciated the support. But the difference in being together was it was like chalk and cheese, just being able to have real conversations, not with a whole group altogether, but just with a couple of people, or with one of the groups as we're walking along doing the activity that we were doing around our community. So relational versus just running program definitely is absolutely key. And anything that we can do in terms of building those relationships with young people that are authentic, that are about where they're at as individuals, not where they're at collectively as a group, are really important.
Yeah, and even if I think back of my own discipleship journey, it's not the program I remember. It's how leaders made me feel, how they welcomed me, maybe the friends I had, but it's always been relationship. And so though that is a challenge in this season, let's find a way of relating with young people, of engaging with them, of fighting for them, encouraging them, celebrating with them.
Yeah, I would just echo what Andy and Anna have already said. It's going to be a season of the kind of the tiny noticeable things that sit outside your program that you as a leader cared. So, for example, we met up as a youth group Friday past. We just took an interest in how has lockdown been. What have been the highlights of this season? Because often we focus on the negative and the challenge, of which there are many, but we celebrated alongside them just some of the wins and some of the learnings of the season. And then the important part of that is remembering those things that were said. So when we meet again, you're asking, well, how are you doing with that now? And you said maybe you're worried about going back to school. How's that been this week? And it's those tiny noticeable things, a bit like a hotel. You don't remember all the glitz and the glamour, but you remember the chocolate in your pillow type thing, so those small, or they remember your name when you go in for your booking. So it's looking for those moments that help build relationship. That I'm interested in you. I've heard what you've said. I've remembered that. I've prayed about that, and you're interested to ask again. So it is. So it's how do we communicate in these times? That's probably the big question. How do we reach out to our young people? How are we connecting with those young people that have disengaged? Because only maybe a small portion are willing to meet up another small portion are willing to meet in Zoom, but then there maybe is a portion of your group that is disengaged, and they shouldn't be forgot about. So it's how do we then reach out relationally to them, saying that we're interested in them, we miss them, and the appropriate ways to do that.
Connecting with young people individually by phone or on social media or whatever, because raises all sorts of questions around safeguarding guidelines and all those sorts of things. And for those of you that are involved with Urban Saints groups, we have the Good Practice Guide for Groups, which gives a lot of help on that. A lot of people misinterpret some of that stuff that says, okay, absolutely no contact with young people is possible outside of the group time. And that's not what it says. It says that in normal circumstances, that's very much the norm. These are far from normal circumstances. But it is possible to be in contact where we are in contact with individual young people, where they're in touch with us and say, look, can I talk to you about this? Or we're just touching base, sending a message to say, how you doing? The important thing is that we're accountable in that. So we're screenshotting that, or we're showing other leaders that, and we're logging that, so that there's nothing hidden about what we're doing. It can't be misinterpreted as being predatory or whatever by anybody might choose to interpret it that way. But we're covering ourselves in that. But absolutely, we need to be maintaining those relationships that support young people to survive and thrive in this season.
Yeah, and we just really encourage that if you're in any doubt, the communication lines with those young people, just always be open and transparent on things, because actually there might be young people, as we spoke about in week 3, that are really struggling with negative coping mechanisms. They might really be struggling with self-harm or a whole variety of things, and they can be frightening conversations for us as leaders, because we think, what we're supposed to do, but any fear, let it come to the light in the bigness of the team to then be able to walk these journeys through with the young people. When they talk about their loneliness, when they talk about the challenges that they're facing, we wholeheartedly just walk that with them, but we never walk alone. We have a team of others that can walk with us. Even though you might connect and click with a young person more than maybe another one in the group, because we do have that different fits with young people, just be really transparent, just as Andy said, just to reiterate that, because I know sometimes we can hold back from saying something, but actually a young person would massively be valued by saying, we really celebrate you, we think this about you. And we were talking about what can be the encouragements that we can send out. So a tool of what we can do is go back to a bigger picture of all the young people in your group and send a personalised postcard that just speaks life about them, celebrating who they are and who we see them to be. Because sometimes we're the last person to see what we're about. So hearing it from someone that we respect and have a love for, as it was, that could sing massively into the well-being of that young person. So even some of those ideas afresh can be implemented once again or for the very first time in helping keep on loving these young people well.
I feel like the importance that has been highlighted in a couple of trainings that I've been a part of is finding that safe space where young people can process and talk about how they are doing. So if that's on Zoom, that's just a bit harder when it's a group, isn't it? Because only one person can talk and then everyone else is listening, or figuring out how to meet, or giving them a phone call. If you have any hesitations and just want to speak that through, I think that's what we're here for, is helping you figure out how can you engage with your young people so that they can have that safe space. Because we don't want to come out of this with young people feeling like they had no one to share with or to talk about it, because every area said, no, you can't come. We want to be the place where they can still come to and make that work, but we do recognize that it's challenging, it's really hard. We know of a lot of groups who have lost their building or can't go back into their building, so it's not the same, is it? And so the challenge for us is higher, but if there is anything that we can do as an organization to help you figure out, okay, what are our options, or just bounce ideas back and forth, I think that's something we would love to do.
Just a couple of things that come to mind. One actually comes out of a program thing, despite everything I've said before. But as part of the pick and mix material we've been generating, we do quite often in the sessions we put a little item that's called high-low awkward prayer, and for my group that has been absolutely key. So the way it works is that each time we meet, everybody gets an opportunity to speak uninterrupted. So what's been the highlight since we were last together, since last week? What's been the real downer since we were last together? Sometimes they go, I can't think of one. Have you had any awkward moments or funny moments that you'd like to share? And some of those can be absolutely hilarious, and quite embarrassing sometimes. And then lastly, is there one thing you'd like us to pray for? And that could be something for them personally. It could be something for that they're concerned about in what's happening generally with our society right now. And what's been great is that all of the group have felt able to do that. And often it's not that we have time to go in the group altogether to go into detail of what it is that they've said, but it gives us as leaders pointers so that we can then pick those up in conversations and in communication with young people afterwards. So that's one thing. The second thing just to mention, which is completely different, was just the value of walking around in your community. Lockdown doesn't mean we have to stay inside of our front door and not go anywhere. And if as leaders we're part of a community, one of the things we can do is be out in the community, walk about, get some exercise, go and walk around. What's the worst thing that could happen? You get some space to prayer walk your community. The best thing that happen, and it happens almost every time I do it, you run into somebody, you run into a parent, or you run into one of the youngsters, and you have maybe a fleeting couple of minute conversation, or maybe it develops into standing in the street. You're there for a quarter of an hour having a conversation that's a bit more in depth. But be out and about. Be out and about.
I really love that as well, just to encourage that, because I was in my local supermarket the other day and I was feeling a bit low, in all honesty, because I hate not being able to meet with my mates and things like that. And then as I'm queuing up, one of the lads that's on the checkout, I could see him, peeping up, and all of a sudden he hollers across the three other places and says, "Hey up, Pam, I thought that were you," because I had to take my mask off to definitely confirm that it was me. And it made my day, just even being in the community, seeing him. And I mean, Luke was in my youth group 10 years ago, and it's so good to be able to still be in that community and see that. And I think that might actually bring breath to our lungs by doing that. And Anna mentioned before we came on about that there's like community clear-ups and things that are going on. Anna, do you want to share a little bit about that?
Yeah, so in Manchester there's something called Keep Manchester Tidy, and so you probably know better your locality, but here we have a litter pick around a specific park, and they are planning to do that every other month, and you can easily get involved in that, and young people could as well. So even if you don't want to organize it, there are ways in which you can engage with your community and bless your community and almost show young people we want to be citizens of our communities, we want to make them better places, we want to be part of this, which I just thought it was amazing, just meeting different people who have the same heart for the community, and just doing something together. And though it seems like there are a lot of restrictions, there are still a lot of things we can do. It's just finding them. So keep an eye out for litter picks, or I think Andy mentioned about seeing planters that hadn't been done for years. So could you plant something still safely and socially distant, but finding those little projects that are still doable.
School, I'd heard of a group local to here that encouraged their young people just in their own neighbourhood to go write a note to their neighbours, post it through, "We're here, if I can help in any way." please shout, and they got engaged then with their local kind of their cul-de-sac, let the residents know that there was someone there, someone thinking about them. So as well as those organised things, there's just stuff you can do and encourage young people to do on their own doorstep, whether it be offer to cut grass or whatever. There's ways to engage there. In a time where it almost seems like we're being driven apart and being more isolated, there's opportunities, like they've said, to engage just locally. So
yeah.
It's looking for the things that you can do. All of the language of announcements and the media at the moment is about what we can't do, but there is so much that we can still do. We serve a God who is the God of the impossible. He's not. A lot of people think of God as this old bloke with a beard that sits on the clouds, looking at people having fun and goes, "Thou shalt not." And that's not the God I know. The God I know is a God who says, "Look, I've got so much more for you to enjoy."
Well, it's been really exciting to natter with all of you guys and hear one another, and I hope that this can be something that you can use and it helps. Again, we filmed this, but we encourage you to just watch the guidelines that are in your locality. Keep check on the National Youth Agency that just covers England, and then the appropriate places for the other nations, and stay connected to us. We really, really are here to serve you and to love you and to build with you, and anything we can do to help, we would really love to. We're really encouraging this time to just keep sharp on actively listening to yourself, to others, and definitely to young people, and definitely to God. We know that actually the very root of this is that if we stay grounded in saying, right, Holy Spirit, you know what's going on, I just pray for your peace and your wisdom. And I wonder that we may have some phenomenal storytelling to give by listening to his leading, because we know he's already gone ahead of us. He hems us in before and behind, and we love him dearly. So he hasn't left us in any of this alone. So let's tune into what he's got to say.
Some words of Paul from his first letter to the Thessalonians. As apostles of Christ, we certainly had a right to make some demands of you, but instead we were like children among you, or we were like a mother feeding and caring for her own children. We loved you so much that we shared with you not only God's good news, but our own lives too. At the heart of discipleship is exactly that. We're not running programs to share good news with young people. We're about making disciples, and that involves sharing our whole being vulnerable, being upfront, being open, and sharing what we know of Jesus as we serve young people in their circumstances.